For centuries, Timbuktu existed in the imagination of the outside world as a place almost too remote to be real. To Europeans, its name became shorthand for the end of the earth, a city hidden somewhere beyond the Sahara. But Timbuktu was never just a symbol of distance. It was a real city, built near the Great Bend of the Niger River in what is now Mali, about 20 kilometers north of the river itself. Its location mattered. It stood close enough to river routes to connect with West Africa's agricultural and commercial heartlands, yet far enough into the desert edge to serve caravans crossing the Sahara. That meeting point between sand and river made Timbuktu one of the most important crossroads in African history. Long before Timbuktu became famous for scholars, mosques, and manuscripts, people were already living in this region. Archaeological evidence points to prehistoric settlement in the area, showing that the land around the future city had human significance well before medieval trade transformed it. Timbuktu itself began more modestly, not as a grand capital, but as a seasonal settlement. It served nomads, traders, and communities moving with the rhythms of climate, pasture, and commerce. Over time, that temporary camp became permanent. By the early 12th century, Timbuktu was no longer just a stopover. It had become a settled place, positioned to benefit from changes in trade routes and the growing exchange between North Africa, the Sahara, and the kingdoms of West Africa. The secret of Timbuktu's rise was geography combined with trade. The Sahara was not simply an empty barrier, it was a vast commercial highway, crossed by caravans carrying goods, ideas, and people. Timbuktu sat near routes that linked North African markets with West African resources. Salt, one of the most valuable necessities of the age, moved south from desert mines. Gold, ivory, and other goods moved north from the regions below the Sahara. A city placed near the Niger River could connect camel caravans to river transport, allowing goods to continue across long distances. Timbuktu grew because it stood where different economic worlds touched. It was not isolated from civilization, it was made powerful by connection. A major turning point came in the 14th century, during the age of the Mali Empire. Around 1325, the famous ruler Mansa Musa passed through or near Timbuktu after his pilgrimage to Mecca. Mansa Musa's journey became legendary because of the scale of his wealth and the attention it drew to Mali. His reign helped shift trade, prestige, and Islamic learning towards cities like Timbuktu. As part of the Mali Empire, Timbuktu benefited from imperial protection, commercial networks, and religious patronage. The city's importance was not just about money. It became part of a wider Islamic world, connected intellectually to North Africa, Egypt, and beyond, while remaining deeply rooted in West African society. Timbuktu's reputation as a city of learning grew alongside its reputation as a city of trade. Wealth made scholarship possible. Merchants funded teachers, books, buildings, and students. Islamic learning flourished, especially around institutions such as the Sankore Madrasa, often described as one of the great centers of education in medieval Africa. Scholars studied theology, law, grammar, astronomy, mathematics, and other fields connected to the intellectual life of the Islamic world. Timbuktu was not a university in the modern European sense, with one centralized campus and bureaucracy. Instead, it functioned as a network of scholars, schools, mosques, private libraries, and teaching circles. Knowledge moved through people, manuscripts, and patronage. Books became one of Timbuktu's most extraordinary treasures. In its golden age, the city supported a major manuscript culture and book trade. Manuscripts were copied, bought, sold, inherited, and collected in family libraries. These texts were not decorative relics, they were working tools of scholarship, law, teaching, and debate. A learned household could possess handwritten works on religion, language, medicine, mathematics, history, poetry, and commerce. Because paper and books had to move across long trade networks, manuscripts could be extremely valuable. In Timbuktu, learning became part of the city's economy and identity. Its scholars were respected not because the city was mythical, but because it was intellectually active and deeply connected. Political control over Timbuktu changed repeatedly, and each shift affected the city's fortunes. In the first half of the 15th century, Tuareg groups controlled the city for a period. Then, in 1468, the expanding Songhai Empire absorbed Timbuktu. Under Songhai rule, the city remained an important center of commerce and scholarship. The empire's power helped stabilize major routes and cities across the Niger region. Timbuktu's scholars, however, were not merely servants of rulers. They formed an influential urban class with religious and legal authority. This balance between merchants, scholars, nomadic groups, and imperial power made the city dynamic, but also vulnerable whenever wider political order weakened. In 1591, Timbuktu entered a new and difficult chapter. A Moroccan army crossed the Sahara and defeated the Songhai Empire. The campaign was driven by ambition, wealth, and the desire to control trans-Saharan trade. After the victory, the invaders made Timbuktu their capital in the region and established a new ruling class known as the Arma. At first, this connected the city to Moroccan power, but over time the Arma became virtually independent. The conquest disrupted the political and economic systems that had supported Timbuktu's golden age. Trade routes shifted, imperial structures weakened, and the city's position became less secure. Timbuktu survived, but its era of peak influence began to fade. As Timbuktu declined in political and commercial power, its fame abroad moved in a strange direction. Writers such as Leo Africanus and later Shabini described the city to audiences far away, helping shape its image outside West Africa. In Europe, where direct knowledge of the interior of West Africa was limited, Timbuktu became a place of speculation. Stories of gold, scholars, and distance mixed with fantasy. The city's reputation shifted from wealthy and learned to mysterious and almost unreachable. This myth often distorted reality, but it also shows how powerful Timbuktu's historical memory had become. Few cities could lose some of their former influence and still grow larger in global imagination. The centuries after the Golden Age brought fragmented rule and continued hardship. Different tribes and regional powers governed Timbuktu at different times, while the great trans-Saharan trade networks that had once enriched it became less dominant in the global economy. Maritime trade routes around Africa and across the Atlantic changed the balance of power. The city remained culturally important, but it no longer commanded the same commercial centrality. In 1893, French colonial forces took control of Timbuktu as part of their expansion into what became French Sudan. Colonial rule imposed new administrative structures and redirected political authority. When Mali became independent in 1960, Timbuktu became part of the modern Republic of Mali. In modern times, Timbuktu has faced threats very different from the caravan politics of the medieval world. Extremist groups have endangered the city's people and attacked its cultural heritage, including historic religious sites and manuscripts. These acts were not only attacks on buildings, they were attacks on memory. Timbuktu's heritage matters because it challenges narrow ideas about Africa's past. It proves that medieval West Africa was home to cities of trade, scholarship, law, manuscript production, and international connection. Local families, librarians, preservationists, and international organizations have worked to protect what remains. In some cases, manuscripts were hidden, moved, or digitized to keep them from destruction. Timbuktu's story is not simply a rise and fall tale. It is the story of how a seasonal settlement became a city known across continents, how salt, gold, and ivory helped finance scholarship, how books became a form of wealth, and how geography turned a desert-edge town into a bridge between worlds. Its population and fortunes have changed, and recent conflict has left deep scars. Yet Timbuktu remains one of the clearest reminders that history is often more connected than maps suggest. The city was never just remote. It was a crossroads, a library, a marketplace, a prize of empires, and a symbol of African intellectual achievement that still deserves protection. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.